Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Cada Lunch and Learn. Thank you for joining us for this 30-minute debate. We have two speakers today, Dan and Sarah. Just a little housekeeping. We'll all be muted to avoid any background noise. And I would encourage all of you to put your questions into the chat and we'll run through them later. So today, we're going to talk about brand collaborations. From Greggs and Primark to Tiffany and Nike, brand collaborations are becoming increasingly common. So we're going to look at how collaborations can be used to attract an entirely new customer base or even extend the appeal of your brand to include a whole new category. I'll hand over to Dan and Sarah.
Thanks, Meher. Thanks for the introduction and thanks for joining us today. You mentioned Greggs and Primark. For me, that is one of the most exciting examples that I've seen recently. It really is a departure from what we consider to be a kind of ordinary standard Greggs store. It's a completely new concept. And interestingly, it's a partnership that feels like it's sort of matured over time. I think it was February 2022 when Primark launched its range of Greggs branded clothing. So it was quite humorous. There was underwear, there were full tracksuits, hoodies, that sort of thing. I think there were 11 pieces. There was a pop-up boutique in Dean Street that was selling in Soho, that was selling the pieces, and you had to get I think there were 300 tickets available. There was really excitement generated around it, and it all sold out. And obviously showed that there's demand for that from Primark shoppers for Greggs branded products, and there's also a lot of awareness as well. So perhaps testing the market, testing the water, and seeing what the demand is. The Tasty by Greggs cafe has now gone into, I think, 3 Primark stores. Started in Birmingham, it's in Oxford Street East, and I think it's either in a 3rd store or about to open. They've just announced that another 3 are going to open by the summer. So this is a real commercial partnership. It's not a pop-up, it's not a fad. The interior it's Greggs, but it's different. There's a sausage roll swing, there's donut-inspired booth seating, there's lots of Insta-friendly locations. The menu is the same, plus some extra items, including something that went viral on TikTok. So for me, that's a really interesting, exciting partnership. It's good to see this sort of thing rolling out. That's one of the top ones for me, I think.
Well, I think I agree with you, and I think it's partly one of the reasons why we wanted to look at this subject today was just seeing how successful that's been and how quickly it's matured into something that both brands obviously have confidence in. For anyone who's not from the UK, it's probably worth just pointing out that Greggs is a bakery chain, which is very much at the value end of the spectrum, and proudly so. In the same way, that McDonald's is very clear about the level of value that it offers its food at. Greggs is very similar, but what it does with its baked goods is it offers them, for the most part, as a functional kind of takeaway. It's a very large chain in the UK, probably second only to McDonald's in terms of outlets. So it's grown over, I don't know, probably the last 30 years to this size, and it's very much focused on convenience. But what's interesting is that the Greggs as a brand and Primark as a brand, both, I would imagine, they've realised have a fairly healthy overlap in terms of their customer base, and realise that there's this potential for partnership. The biggest, one of the interesting things about it is that, as I said, as it being a primarily takeaway offer, what they've done with Primark is quite different. Is they've recognised that the shopper mission when someone is in one of these large, very value-focused fast fashion stores, is that this is not a get in and get out moment. This is actually a place where you might want to stop and have some dwell time on that shopping journey before you continue walking the store. So they've recognised that. They've put large numbers of covers in, around 100, certainly in the large London site, and we both visited it on separate occasions over the last month or so, and have seen it busy, and have seen it with people having tea, having coffee, eating, drinking, socialising, very much what you would expect for a store-in-store cafe, but a really good fit for these brands. And as you said, given that they're expanding and looking to take this to more sites, it's obviously one that's proving to be commercially successful as well.
Yeah, and exactly, and the point you've made about them both occupying a similar sort of market position. is a really interesting one. Sometimes that is the case with collaboration, sometimes not. Obviously, they're both more at the value end of the spectrum. Another interesting example that we've come across very much at the luxury end is the partnership between Four Seasons Hotel Group, initially with a trial at the Houston location, and a membership club called Vivrel, which was founded in 2018. And what they do is they offer access to designer goods. So there's a shared closet almost of handbags and jewelry mainly, and you can become a member for a monthly fee. So the idea there is to make luxury fun, to make it accessible, to be sustainable, because obviously people aren't having to buy lots and lots of new product that they then arguably don't use very often. So that's what Vivrel's all about. And the partnership with the Four Seasons Houston is that as a guest staying at that hotel, you have access to Vivrel as part of your guest experience. So you're not being asked to sign up. As part of staying there, you have access to this rotating collection of jewelry, handbags, accessories, etc. So say you're there and you buy yourself a new dress and you want a perfect pair of earrings or the perfect handbag to wear out that evening and you haven't got it, you can then dip into Vivrel's collection and borrow something. So it's a really nice differentiator for a guest. It's something that it allows the Four Seasons, which is, a huge hotel group, which probably struggles to drive innovation through down to the guest experience quickly. It gives them that access to that startup dynamism, that startup energy that Vivrel offers. And from Vivrel's point of view, it obviously gives them access to that customer base, that guest base that they want to access, and who will then be introduced to the brand and may then decide, well, actually, this is fabulous. This is something that I'd like to subscribe to in my own personal capacity. I think that's a really interesting collaboration at the more luxury end of the spectrum. And presumably, if it's successful, there'll be an opportunity to roll it out further to other Four Seasons sites.
Yeah, and what I think is interesting is that we've seen brands like Selfridges trialing and promoting the idea that you can hire apparel, so you rather than just buying, because obviously the majority of what Selfridges are doing is selling product, but rather than just buying, you can also hire clothing for special occasions, or just because you'd rather hire something and wear it once or twice than buy it. But that's always been in a retail context. What I like about this being in a hospitality context is what Sarah said, which is that there's a higher use benefit, in the sense that people who are traveling don't have their full wardrobes with them. They don't have everything that they might want. And so if you're away for a few days or a week or two and you're staying at the Four Seasons in Houston and you're going to an event, or you're just going out for the day and you want to look or feel different, these products are readily available for you. And it feels like a real good extra level of service that Four Seasons are able to use as a differentiator between their competitors and other hotels at that level that people might want to stay at. And as Sarah said, what's good for Vivrel as well is it establishes them as a brand with credentials on a par with Four Seasons, and also gives them access to those Four Seasons guests, who are very likely to be the right level of customer to take an interest in Vivrel and be at the core of their target market. So we can see how both brands benefit from this collaboration without there being any real cannibalization. So it feels like a very strong offer, a very strong idea.
Yeah, they're both bringing something to it. The spontaneity is particularly appealing, I think. And it's interesting you mentioned in the rental, just, a side note, I was in Selfridges on Friday, and I think the brand is called Thanks, It's Rented. And, you can go and pick a dress and rent it, and instead of owning something. And I think that's really becoming more and more important, and collaborations that can really offer something sustainable to customers is going to become more and more important as well. But that's going slightly off topic for the purposes of this webinar. I think a really interesting one, Dan, that you mentioned earlier in the week was Nike and Apple, which is one that sort of we're going back in time.
Yeah, well, I was trying to think what is the first brand collaboration I could remember that certainly kind of appeared on my radar. And back in 2006 or 2007. Nike and Apple collaborated to create what I also think is one of the first, if not the first, examples of wearable technology around health and fitness. They created this was before the iPhone, so you've got to remember, it's hard to remember, but actually quite an important point here. is that it was before the iPhone, and it was also, it worked with an iPod. So what Apple were doing was they were taking a single-use product, basically something that was great at the time for playing music with and lots of people took it out running or jogging or exercising, and they worked out that by adapting this technology and by putting a tracker in a shoe, you could suddenly start to get all this data about how far you'd run and what the incline might have been or your cadence. All of this stuff that is now, very well taken care of by numerous apps, not least kind of Apple's own proprietary health app, but also Strava and those other fitness apps that really have transformed the amount of data that people can get about their exercise regime and their health. But this was before then, so you had to put a physical thing in the shoe, you had to have a physical adapter that you put into the bottom of the iPod, and that then gave you access to that data. What they did very cleverly was that they made this little lozenge thing that sat in the shoe, fit underneath the insole, and Nike created a small range of shoes that had exactly the right size space in there for you to put the item in. So effectively, both of these brands were really promoting using technology to track your exercise and to track your improvement. And this was very much at a time when Nike was, focusing on Just Do It as their core strap. And at these mid-2000s was when Nike was adamant that it was a fitness and sportswear brand and not a fashion brand. And that any fashion use, if you like, was kind of incidental, and that people may have been wearing it for streetwear or for comfort or for leisure purposes, but that wasn't their primary purpose. Yeah. Nike was still 15 or plus years ago, very, very focused on that. Now, this product was short-lived because a year later the iPhone came out, and by 2009 there was, the first health tracking versions of, I think, the iPhone 3 or whatever, were allowing you to do this without needing this separate piece of technology. But what it did do was establish both brands as outliers in the minds of consumers for developing these kind of technologies and offers that help with fitness. And we see now how bigger market Apple has made of this.
Yeah, and the idea that, being able to have access to your statistics and your PBs and being able to look back and track how you've been performing isn't the preserve of, it's no longer the preserve of professional athletes.
No.
The tech is everywhere. It's, it's on your phone whether you want it or not. You'll know your phone knows how many steps you've done, whether you're tracking it or not. And it's interesting that you talk about this partnership that Nike and Apple had back in 2000 and the early 2000s, because a more recent one, and to touch on your fashion comments, is Tiffany and Nike. Which I think has been, there's possibly been a bit of a mixed reaction to this one. I think with your Apple and Nike example, it's really easy to see the benefit for customers. It's a really straightforward benefit that chimes with this brand is all about sport. Whereas, excuse me, the Tiffany and Nike brand, collaboration they've launched the sneakers, and they've got the swoosh on them, which is in Tiffany blue. And it's unashamedly a fashion piece. And, you question whether, forget about it being for sport, is it even a shoe or is it a collectible? Would you dare to wear it, or has it instantly become so valuable? Has its resale value become so high that actually all they've done is create shoes that are very expensive and are collectibles and that have nothing to do with actually being worn or being used to sport? And also the other argument is this one of those collaborations where both party benefits equally?
Yeah, and I think that's a big challenge for me in terms of how, is this an equitable thing, in the sense that you can see that Apple needed Nike back in 2006 because they didn't make shoes. They needed someone to make those shoes, and there was a purpose for those shoes being specifically modelled in a certain way. What we've seen over the last few years, and I guess you can't really fault Nike for embracing the inevitable, which is that sportswear has become such an important part of the fashion landscape that you can't fight it. But that what we've seen is that they've collaborated, as we said, with Tiffany. They've also collaborated with Dior and Louis Vuitton. And what they've done in each of those instances is take one of their classic shoes and effectively, Nike have given the blueprint. This is our shoe, and with minor tweaks, minor design tweaks, the shoe then becomes either a Louis Vuitton or Dior or Tiffany version of that same shoe. So, as Sarah said, the Tiffany is probably the weakest in the sense that it is the Tiffany blue, the Tiffany logo, and a small silver bar on the rear of the shoe, but very little else, if anything, has changed. At least with the Louis Vuitton collaboration, there was, as well as the patterns being used and the colorways that were, are very, very much Louis Vuitton known. They were also using kind of high-end stitching techniques. So there were these extra layers going on. But yes, your point is really that these are collectibles. These aren't things that very many of the buyers are going to wear. Most people are buying them and keeping them in a box or putting them on a shelf. The list price is, $800 to $1,000 per pair, and the resale price of these short runs is then $3,000 to $10,000. So this is very much creating a collector's market. And what does this do for the brand? I mean, I think with Tiffany and Nike particularly, you can see how Tiffany benefits potentially from having access to a younger or a different audience. We know that over the last 5 years, Tiffany has been trying to make sure their brand remains relevant and accessible, but obviously has a barrier to entry as a price point, so it's not ever selling cheap things. But so this helps them. But how does this actually help Nike? Maybe Nike's strategy is much more about high fashion, and much more about those connections to allow them to, as well as be one of the great everyman brands of the last 40 or 50 years globally, to also position them at a higher strata and make sure they're relevant in those fashion worlds also, because there are a lot of trend leaders there. That's my speculation. I don't know.
There have been some quite interesting AI takes on what the collaboration could have looked like, actually, that I've seen online. And what really comes through from what the shoes could have looked like is all the AI generated ones. They have a sense of sort of joy to them. They are not what you get from the Tiffany Nike, the official one, is, I suppose, what you regard as a very classic, very classy looking shoe, very refined, all about craftsmanship and elegance. And I think perhaps there's speculation online that there's a bit of a lack of joy and a bit of a lack of sort of ebullience to it. That's not coming through, whereas the AI generated ones were a bit more fun, for want of a better expression. I mean, do you think joy/fun is an important part of a collaboration?
Well, I don't think it has to be, because you could potentially do something very serious. I mean, I think there's certainly it does give brands an opportunity to play, but I don't think that the Vivrel or Four Seasons one is necessarily. I mean, it's got very positive. So as a customer experiencing that, you might feel very joyful because you've got a free loan of a handbag for a day or two, and that's probably brilliant. But I think what is important is that the brands feel like there's a sense of balance with what they're getting, and that customers feel that there's a logic to what these two brands are doing by coming together. Could be surprising, could be exactly what you expect, but it's got to feel comfortable with both brands' positions. And I think maybe part of the challenge is that Nike as a mainstream brand has a very different position to Dior or to Tiffany, and therefore there's a bit of tension there. Although you were talking about IKEA and Off-White recently, and how Off-White, and actually at the time when the Louis Vuitton Nike collaboration happened, Virgil Abloh, who's now dead, was the creative director of Louis Vuitton at the time, and so had led that. So his Off-White label collaborated with IKEA, and that's again two very different bits of market position, but seemed to be something of a success.
Well, Off-White already offered a small range of homewares. Obviously, IKEA is all about homewares, so there was that connection, and I suppose it allows that expansion into a broader range. And again, it's that idea of being able to access something from a very everyday retailer like IKEA, but that is very refined and has those sort of design credentials and that eclecticism. Although you did have to go to one of 3 IKEAs to get it, and you had to have a ticket and you had to queue up, so access wasn't quite as easy as you might think.
I think we do see that kind of idea of limited editions is often a part of collaboration, that rather than it can be mass market, but maybe it's only available for a season or a certain amount of time, or others, it's absolutely strictly limited. There are only available in certain stores or only available in certain numbers. So there is often an exclusivity with either through time or numbers that is present there,
Yes.
rather than it being a permanent and ongoing situation. And I think there's something in that about keeping this fresh rather than seeing it, unless there's a real benefit, as there is with the Primark and Greg's example right at the start of this discussion, where you can see that it could be something that rolls out because it continues to benefit the customers to both brands.
Well, exactly, and people always have to eat. If you ate last week at Primark, you still might eat, and you go back in a week's time, you're not eating that, so you need to eat again.
Yeah, and there is that, there is that quite old-fashioned, but very true, point, which is that food drives footfall. So it's an easy way of getting people into your stores. Although that the low price, arguably the low price points at Primark mean that it's actually quite easy for people to go in there anyway.
Exactly. Sorry, Meher, I think you had a question. I saw you waving.
Hi, hold on. Thank you. I do have a question. So to conclude all of that, what do you both think are the successful attributes for a brand partnership?
I think it depends on no, it doesn't depend exactly, but there's a real difference, as we've said, between a brand partnership that looks like it has a solid commercial future, Greggs and Primark, and more of a marketing initiative for a season. So collaboration between the brands, deep collaboration, hard work, working out what customers really want, what's really going to benefit the customer and the guests, and then working back from that rather than we have this product, how can we change it, amend it, blend it with our brand partner to offer something else. Actually think about your customer, think about what they want. A bit like the partnership between Whole Foods and Headspace. So Headspace is a mindfulness app. They're on a mission to improve the health and happiness of the world. That ties in well with Whole Foods, which one can presume has customers who are keen to look after themselves, mind, body, spirit, well-being. So my Headspace being able to help people to develop that connection with the food, with what they're eating, it ties in nicely. So knowing your customers, knowing what they want, knowing what their expectations are, and then working out what you can do to surprise and delight them as well.
And I think for me, one of the important things for brands to do if they're considering a collaboration is to work out what does this partnership allow our brand or our brands together to do that they couldn't do on their own. How does that create something that is either an experience or a product that the customer couldn't expect from us or wouldn't expect from us? So either that expertise or market position or access to a product group or whatever that might be, that really allows you to jump into a different area. That's good, but as Sarah says, it's got to be a benefit. It can't just be kind of a random offshoot. It's got to be something that will resonate with your customers and that will make sense to them. And it should drive visits to the brand, whether that's digitally or in person. And it should really benefit the brand and allow you to create new stories around your brand as well, create new storytelling opportunities. We did ponder, could we talk? What we wanted to do is try and find examples that did that where there was a benefit. We did think we could maybe talk about some of the other more kind of down to earth collaborations, but we felt that you start looking at shop in shop sort of things rather than really looking for innovation, or you look at collaborations that make good business sense but are really it's just about much more, again, a bit like a department store inviting brands in.
Yeah.
It's Waitrose here in the UK is rolling out Gale's fixturing in their stores this year. Gale's again is a long-standing but much more upmarket independent bakery, and by partnering with Gale's, having sold their products in store for a few years, by creating those fixtures, I'm sure that they will see the commercial benefit. But what that isn't really doing is bringing anything new. Waitrose are well known for good quality groceries. Gale's are known for very good baked goods. By putting that together, it will be a commercial success for sure, but we didn't see any product innovation there or service innovation. So I think it's, there are many good ways that brands can help each other, but that collaboration and really changing up requires a deeper level of thinking, probably a deeper commitment, and maybe being a bit brave as well.
Wow. So surprising delight, shock and awe. Okay, so just give everyone a minute to put in their questions. I know we're running a little bit over. Are there any examples where there are quite a different customer base and they've collaborated successfully?
So you mean a collaboration that's actually managed to attract a different section of customers? I'm not sure about different, but the Target and Lego one is interesting. So Target in the US partnered with Lego to create a whole series of products that were only available in, so Lego branded products were only available in Target for the holiday season, so from December the 1st. And the idea there was really to recognize that Lego is popular across all the age groups, and it's very well known obviously for the brick, but it's also a very well-loved brand. So what can we offer that goes beyond the brick? So there were homewares, there were accessories, there was apparel, and there were particular ranges that were only available in Target. And the idea was, for the holidays, focus on that joy that families have when they come together and things that families can do together. So different age ranges. So really looking at how you can appeal to people from, I suppose, you know, from when you can first hold your Duplo brick when you're about 1 or 2, all the way up to grandparents who are sitting down with the little ones to spend time together. So really, I suppose not so much a whole new group, but covering all the bases and going beyond your core product that you're known for.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing was actually that it was, you know, it wasn't exclusive Lego sets. It was exactly as Sarah said, it was apparel and homewares, but it was done really, it wasn't a t-shirt with a Lego logo on it or a Lego man. It was taking the color palette, taking some of the textures, taking some of those ideas. So it was a really thoughtful way of extending the brand and absolutely mass market brand. So absolutely you need to partner with somebody like Target who could continue to deliver that mass market experience. There would be little point, you know, it would be odd to imagine Lego and Tiffany collaborating, for example, because, you know, where's the overlap between those two product groups or those two customer bases?
Yeah.
Silver bricks, that's what that would be.
There you are, you've solved it.
Yeah,
solved
exactly.
It. Well done there.
Okay, so we are at 59. If there are no more questions, it seems. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Dan and Sarah. If you do have any questions or you do want to chat with Dan and Sarah about any of these topics that we've said in the past or that we've talked about today, feel free to email us at enquiries@caleb.co.uk, or you can reach us on any of the social platforms that we're on. You can also watch this back on YouTube or listen to us on our podcasts on Amazon Music and Google Podcasts and even Podbean. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful rest of your day. And we'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.